In the untamed American frontier of 1875, where justice often bows to tribal law, a young woman stands condemned at dawn. Abandoned by her own people, she awaits the hangman's noose. Her crime, daring to challenge ancient traditions. But fate has other plans. As the morning mist parts, a legendary warrior appears, his reputation as fierce as the wind that carries his name. Against all tribal codes, he cuts her bonds and declares her his heart's choice, an act that will shake the foundations of two worlds. Through the wilderness they flee, pursued by those who once called them kin. But what drives a warrior to risk everything for a condemned stranger? Before we continue this tale of forbidden love and sacred honor, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The weight of the tribal. Council necklace had once felt like honor itself around Standing Fawn's neck. Now, as she knelt in the dirt before the council fire, that same necklace lay shattered at her feet, its carefully strung buffalo bone beads scattered like fallen stars across the packed earth. Each bead represented a generation of medicine, women who had come before her, their wisdom passed down, like water flowing from mountain to valley, unchanging and pure. She had been destined to take her place among them, to wear the necklace as her mother had, and her mother's mother before her. But destiny, Standing Fawn had learned, was as fragile as the thread that had held those ancient beads together. The council fire cast long shadows across the faces of the tribal elders. 7 of them, wrapped in buffalo robes against the autumn, chill, their expressions carved from the same stone as the cliffs that sheltered their village. At their center sat Grey Wolf, her own grandfather, his face lined with the weight of what must come next. "You were warned," he said, his voice carrying the slow gravity of mountain stone. "3 times you were told, the ways of our people are not for questioning, they are for following, as the river follows its banks, as the eagle follows the wind." Standing, Fawn raised her chin, though her hands trembled where they were bound behind her back. "And when the river floods its banks, when the eagle flies against the wind, are these not also the ways of nature, grandfather?" A murmur rippled through the gathering crowd. She saw her mother turn away, unable to watch. Her father stood rigid, his face a mask of shame, but it was her younger sister's eyes that cut deepest, wide with fear and something else, understanding perhaps, or hope. "You gave medicine to the white settler's child," Grey Wolf continued, each word falling like snow, soft, yet cold enough to burn. "You crossed the boundary that keeps our people safe. You risked exposing our sacred ways to those who would destroy them." The child was dying. Standing Fawn's voice cracked, but she forced herself to continue. "Our ways teach us that all life is sacred. Would you have me honor our traditions by watching an innocent die? Our traditions exist to protect us." Thunder Bear, the youngest of the council members, slammed his fist against his knee. "How many of our people have died because we trusted the white man? How many of our sacred places have they desecrated? How many promises have they broken?" Standing Fawn turned to face him, the firelight catching the tears on her cheeks. "And how are we different if we let hatred guide our hands? If we turn away from those in need, do we not become what we fear?" Grey Wolf raised his hand for silence. The weight of generations pressed down on his shoulders as he spoke. "The council has deliberated. By breaking our most sacred law, you have placed all of us in danger. The penalty—" He paused, his old voice finally betraying emotion. "The penalty is death." The crowd's reaction was a living thing. Gasps and cries mixing with the night wind, carrying away the last warmth of the council fire. Standing, Fawn felt the world tilt beneath her knees, but she remained upright. In her mind she saw again the face of the settler's child, fever-bright eyes growing clear as the medicine took effect. She saw the mother's tears of joy, felt the small arms wrap around her in gratitude. If this was to be the price of that moment, she would pay it without regret. At dawn, Grey Wolf continued, you will be taken to the hanging tree. Until then, you will be kept in the medicine lodge, a final irony for one who would betray its teachings. He lifted the broken necklace, letting the remaining beads fall one by one into the fire. Let your name be struck from the songs of our people. Let your spirit find no rest in the eternal hunting grounds. As they led her away, Standing Fawn caught one last glimpse of her sister's face in the crowd. The girl had picked up one of the fallen beads, clutching it tight in her small fist. In that moment, Standing Fawn understood that while they might strike her name from their songs, they could not erase the truth she had revealed, that compassion, like water, would always find a way to flow, wearing down even the hardest stone of tradition. Swift Arrow touched the medicine bundle at his waist, fingers tracing the worn leather that held his most sacred possessions. Within lay the eagle feather from his first vision quest, a stone from the river where his father had taught him to fish, and the arrowhead that had given him his name, pulled from his own shoulder after the battle that had made him a legend. Among his people, the bundle seemed heavier tonight as he watched Grey Wolf's village from his hidden position in the hills. News traveled fast across the frontier, carried on the wind like smoke signals, and word of the medicine woman's sentence had reached him before sunset. He had ridden hard for 2 days, his horse's hooves eating up the miles between his own tribe's hunting grounds and this place of judgment. You should not be here, my friend. The voice came soft as owl wings behind him. Swift Arrow didn't turn. He'd known Running Fox would find him. They had fought together, bled together, saved each other's lives more times than either could count. A life hangs in the balance, Swift Arrow replied, still studying the village below. Torches flickered around the medicine lodge where they kept her, casting dancing shadows on the lodge's weathered walls. Would you have me ride away? Running Fox settled beside him, his own medicine bundle clinking softly with the movement. I would have you remember who you are. The Council of 7 Tribes named you War Chief not 3 moons ago. Your actions reflect on all our people now. Swift Arrow closed his eyes, remembering the ceremony. The weight of the War Chief's feathers in his hair, the sacred paint on his face, the prayers and songs that had bound him to his duty. And what of my actions if I do nothing? If I let an innocent die because of fear wrapped in tradition's clothing? You don't know she's innocent. I know enough. Swift Arrow opened his eyes, turning to face his friend. I've heard the stories. She saved a child, used her knowledge to preserve life rather than let hatred guide her hand. Tell me, brother, when did healing become a crime among our people? Running Fox was silent for a long moment, his face carved with shadows in the starlight. The white settlers have taken so much from us. Our lands, our buffalo, our children, to their schools where they try to erase who we are. The elders fear that sharing our medicine ways will be one more thing they steal. Fear! Swift Arrow spat the word like a bitter root. Fear is the poison that will destroy us faster than any white man's bullet. We speak of honor, of courage, of walking in balance with the world around us. But where is the honor in executing one of our own for showing compassion? Where is the courage in letting fear dictate our actions? He pulled his medicine bundle free, unwrapping it with reverent care. The eagle feather caught the starlight, its edges gleaming like silver. The river stone seemed to pulse with the memory of flowing water. And the arrowhead, he held it up, letting Running Fox see the jagged edge that had once torn his flesh. Do you remember the day I got this? He asked softly. Running Fox nodded. The raid on the settlers' wagon train. You broke formation. To save that old woman when her horse spooked, took an arrow meant for her. A white woman, an enemy, according to our traditions. Swift Arrow rewrapped his bundle carefully. But in that moment, I saw only a grandmother, no different than my own. The arrow I took taught me that courage isn't about following rules. It's about following your heart, even when every rule tells you not to. And what does your heart tell you now? Swift Arrow stood, his decision settling around him like a well-worn blanket. It tells me that some traditions need to be broken so that new ones can grow. It tells me that a woman brave enough to risk death to save a child is someone worth fighting for. Running Fox rose beside him, concern etched on his features. The consequences will be mine to bear. Swift Arrow clasped his friend's shoulder. You should return to our people. Tell them I acted alone. Tell them I betrayed my oath if you must. You know I can't do that. Running Fox's hand went to his own medicine bundle. If you're determined to do this foolish thing, then I'll stand with you. Someone needs to make sure you don't get yourself killed. The ghost of a smile touched Swift Arrow's lips. Like old times? Like old times, Running Fox agreed, though his voice was grave. But Swift Arrow, if we do this, there's no going back. Everything will change. Perhaps, Swift Arrow said, watching as the moon began its descent toward dawn. Everything needs to. Dawn painted the hanging tree in shades of blood and gold. Standing Fawn watched her breath form clouds in the chill morning air as they led her forward, the rough hemp rope already hanging from the strongest branch. Her bare feet left prints in the frost-covered grass, the last marks she would make upon the earth. The village gathered in silence, cold mist wreathing around them like restless spirits. Even the morning birds held their songs, as if nature itself paused to witness what was to come. Grey Wolf stood beneath the tree, his ceremonial robe bearing the weight of generations. When he spoke, his voice carried no trace of the grandfather who had once bounced her on his knee. Before the sun touches the mountaintop, justice will be done. The rope scratched against Standing Fawn's neck as they fitted it, the fibre carrying the scent of dust and endings. She closed her eyes, searching for peace in these final moments, but found instead a strange stillness, like the pause between heartbeats. That stillness shattered with the thunder of hooves. Two riders burst from the morning mist like spirits made flesh, their horses' breath streaming white in the cold air. The lead rider was tall, his presence commanding even at a distance. War, paint gleaming fresh on his face. Standing Fawn recognized the markings of a war chief, though not from any tribe she knew. Chaos erupted. Warriors reached for weapons, women pulled children back, and Grey Wolf's voice rose above the confusion. "Hold! This is a sacred—" His words cut off as the war chief's horse reared, sending those nearest the tree stumbling backward. In that moment of confusion, the second rider circled wide, drawing attention and arrows, while the war chief's knife flashed silver in the dawn light. Standing, Fawn felt the rope go slack. Strong hands lifted her, and suddenly she was on the horse, pressed against leather and warmth that smelled of sage and prairie wind. Her rescuer's voice came low and urgent near her ear. "Hold tight!" They wheeled and ran, hooves thundering across the frosted earth. Behind them, shouts and chaos erupted, but the war chief's horse was swift as its rider's name, eating up the ground with powerful strides. Standing, Fawn glimpsed Running Fox falling in behind them, his bow held ready, but no arrows flew. Perhaps the shock of the rescue had bought them these precious seconds. "Why?" she managed to ask, her voice raw from the rope's embrace. "Why would you do this?" Swift Arrow guided his horse with his knees, one arm still holding her secure as they rode. "Because courage deserves courage in return. Because some laws must bend so others don't break." They crested a rise just as the sun broke fully over the mountains, its light catching the severed rope that still hung from the tree behind them, a symbol of everything that had been broken this dawn. Standing Fawn felt the weight of it still around her neck and reached up to pull it free, letting it fall away into the wind. "They'll hunt us," she said. Not a question, but a certainty. "Yes." Swift Arrow's voice held no fear, only calm acceptance. "My own people may join them." A war chief who breaks tribal law becomes less than a common warrior. Understanding bloomed like dawn in Standing Fawn's chest. You sacrificed your position, your honor, for a stranger. The horse slowed slightly as they entered a stand. Of trees, running fox close behind them. Swift Arrow's laugh was soft but genuine. Honor isn't in the position, medicine woman. It's in the choices we make when everything we've been taught fights against what we know is right. Standing Fawn turned these words over in her mind, feeling their truth settle beside her own convictions about healing and compassion. My name is Standing Fawn, she offered, realizing he had risked everything without even knowing who she was. Swift Arrow, he replied, and she felt rather than saw his smile. Though after today, perhaps they'll call me Swift Fool, or Swift Heart, she suggested quietly. Their eyes met briefly, something unspoken passing between them before Running Fox's warning call brought them back to the moment. Riders coming from the east. Then we ride west, Swift Arrow decided, urging his horse deeper into the trees. There are caves in the high country where we can shelter until dark. Do you trust me, Standing Fawn? She thought of the child she had saved, of the rope that had nearly ended her life, of this warrior who had appeared like an answer to a prayer she hadn't dared to speak. Yes, she said, and felt the truth of it in her bones. I trust you. As dusk gathered like a blanket around their makeshift camp, Running Fox spread a worn deerskin map across a flat stone. The hide's surface told stories in carved symbols and careful lines, sacred places marked with spirals, dangerous territories crossed with warning signs, and safe passages indicated by strings of tiny arrows. They'll expect us to head west, toward the Sunset Lands, Running Fox said, his finger tracing a line of mountains that looked like sleeping giants on the hide. That's where most runners go, seeking shelter with the coast tribes. Swift Arrow knelt beside the map, his expression thoughtful in the dying light. Which is why we'll go north, into the high country. He pointed to a region marked with clustered triangles. The paths are treacherous, but the spirits of the mountains keep their own counsel. They'll hide our tracks if we show proper respect. Standing Fawn studied the map from where she sat, wrapped in a blanket Swift Arrow had given her. Her healer's eyes noticed details the warriors might miss. Medicinal plant markers, places of power where the veil between worlds grew thin. There, she said softly, indicating a small spiral nested within the mountain paths. My grandmother spoke of that place, a hidden valley where the healing waters flow. She called it the Moon's Cradle. Swift Arrow looked up, meeting her eyes with quiet intensity. You know it? Only from stories, but she said the waters there can cure any illness, and that the valley itself is protected by ancient spirits who welcome those who come seeking sanctuary. Running Fox made a sound of gentle disbelief. Old tales for children. We need real paths, not spirit roads. All paths are spirit roads if you know how to walk them, Standing Fawn replied, her voice carrying the weight of generations. Of medicine women, and sometimes the oldest tales hide the deepest truths. A wolf howled in the distance, its cry echoing off the canyon walls. Swift Arrow's hand went instinctively to his bow, but his eyes never left the map. How far to this Moon's Cradle? 3 days' ride, Standing Fawn said, then amended, if the weather holds and we're not pursued too closely. Running Fox laid his hand flat on the map, covering several possible routes with his fingers. Grey Wolf's trackers will be following our cold trail by now. They're good, among the best I've seen, and they'll have help. He glanced at Standing. Fawn, your people know these lands better than any. She nodded, accepting this truth. And they'll be driven by more than just duty. My grandfather believes that if he doesn't carry out the sentence, the spirits will turn against our people. He'll send his best hunters, men who can read the land like you read this map. Swift Arrow rolled his shoulders, easing the tension that had built there during their long ride. Then we'll have to be better, cleverer, more determined. He looked at Standing Fawn, his expression softening slightly. Are you certain you want to make this journey? There's still time. We could return, seek mercy from the council. "There is no mercy in fear," she said, echoing his own words from the rescue, "and I won't let you bear the punishment for my choices." Something passed between them then, a recognition of shared conviction that made Running Fox glance away, suddenly feeling like an intruder. He busied himself with the map, marking potential routes with a piece of charcoal. "We'll need to cross the Thunder River," he said, breaking the moment. "The ford here is watched, but I know a place upstream where the waters run shallow over red stones. If we time it right, we can cross at dawn when the mist still clings to the water." Swift Arrow nodded, finally looking away from Standing Fawn. "That gives us a few hours to rest. I'll take first watch." He stood, moving to the edge of their small camp where shadows gathered thick beneath the trees. Standing Fawn watched him go, then turned to Running Fox. Why did he really come for me? A war chief risking everything for a condemned woman. There must be more to it. Running Fox carefully rolled the map, securing it with a leather thong. Swift Arrow has always walked the edge between worlds. Like you, he sees beyond the boundaries others accept without question. He smiled slightly. Perhaps that's why the spirits guided him to your rescue. Or perhaps, Standing Fawn said softly, watching Swift Arrow's silhouette against the darkening sky, some choices are written in our hearts long before we know we'll make them. The shared water skin passed between them like a peace pipe, each drink a small ritual of trust. Standing Fawn's fingers brushed Swift Arrow's as she took it, and she noticed how he didn't flinch from the contact, unlike Running Fox, who maintained a careful distance, as if her condemned status might be catching. They had stopped to rest, the horses near a hollow where spring water bubbled up through red rocks. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the pines, and in the distance thunder rolled across the mountains like drums calling to war. "Tell me about the settlers." "A child," Swift Arrow said quietly, breaking the silence that had stretched between them since their morning ride. "The one you healed." Standing Fawn traced the stitching on the waterskin, each careful thread a testament to someone's patience and skill. "Her name was Sarah. She had the fever that comes with spotted skin, the same sickness that took so many of our children 2 winters ago." Running Fox looked up sharply from where he was checking his bowstring. "The white man's disease?" "Disease knows no color," Standing Fawn replied, her voice carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. "It takes all children equally into the spirit world. But we—" She paused, gathering her thoughts. "We had found a way to fight it. A combination of herbs and prayer and ancient knowledge passed down through generations of medicine women. Knowledge meant to be kept within the tribe," Running Fox reminded her, though his tone held more question than accusation. "Sarah was 6 summers old, the same age as my sister when the spotted fever came to our village." Standing Fawn's eyes grew distant with memory. "I watched my mother use our medicine to save many children that winter, but little dear, the sickness had too strong a hold before we found her. She walked the spirit road while I held her hand." Swift Arrow moved closer, his presence offering silent support. The waterskin lay forgotten between them. "When I heard about Sarah, when I saw her mother's tears, they were the same tears my mother cried, the same desperation in her eyes." Standing Fawn looked up, meeting their gazes steadily. "But there was more, something I haven't told anyone, not even the council." The thunder growled closer, and a cool wind stirred the pines. Swift Arrow waited, patient as the mountains themselves, while Running Fox pretended to focus on his bow. Sarah's mother recognized our medicine bundle. She spoke of her grandmother, a woman who had lived among our people before the great conflicts began. She knew our ways, respected them. Standing Fawn's voice grew soft. "She offered me a trade, her grandmother's journal, filled with our people's medicine knowledge that had been lost during the wars, in exchange for helping her daughter." Running Fox's bowstring snapped with a sharp crack. "Lost knowledge? From before the Great Migration?" Standing Fawn nodded. "Recipes and prayers we thought gone forever. ways of healing that even my grandmother only remembered in fragments. She reached into her dress and withdrew a small leather-bound book. I was going to present it to the council after Sarah was healed, to show them that sharing our medicine could bring back what was lost, that sometimes the things we fear most hold unexpected gifts. Swift Arrow took the journal with reverent care, its pages worn soft with age and use. This is why Grey Wolf was so harsh in his judgment, not just because you helped a white child, but because you discovered that some of our sacred knowledge had been preserved by the very people we were taught to distrust. Truth is rarely pure, Standing Fawn said, watching as he gently returned the journal to her keeping. Like this spring water, it filters through many layers before reaching the light. Running Fox had gone very still, his broken bowstring forgotten. If what you say is true, if there really is lost knowledge in those pages, then the Council's fear makes even more sense. They would rather see these secrets die than admit they might have been wrong about the settlers. Pride, Swifty, Arrow said quietly, can be a deadlier poison than any disease. He looked at Standing Fawn with new understanding. You weren't just saving one child. You were trying to build a bridge between worlds. A bridge made of shared healing. She agreed. Is that not what the spirits would want? For us to remember that all people bleed the same, cry the same, love their children the same. The thunder was directly overhead now, and the first heavy drops of rain began to fall. Swift Arrow picked up the water skin, offering it back to Standing Fawn in a gesture that felt like ceremony. Some bridges, he said, are worth any price to build. The hunter's horn echoed through the dawn mist, its deep voice rolling across the valleys like distant thunder. Standing Fawn felt swift. Arrow tense behind her on the horse, his breath catching for just a moment before releasing slowly. Black Bear's horn, she said, recognizing the distinctive tone. He was my father's best hunter. He can track a hawk's shadow across stone. How far? Running Fox asked, already turning his horse toward a dense stand of cedar trees. Too close. Swift Arrow guided his mount after Running Fox, the horse's hooves silent on the pine-needled earth. They're using the horn to coordinate their search parties. That call means they've found our trail. They rode in tense silence through the cedar grove, branches whispering against their clothes. The morning fog clung to the ground like a spirit. Blanket, thick enough to hide their passage but thin enough to make every shadow seem like a waiting warrior. The horn called again, answered by another from the west. Standing Fawn closed her eyes, reading the messages hidden in those mournful notes. They're moving to cut us off from the high passes. You understand their code? Swift Arrow's question held no suspicion, only respect. My father taught all his children the hunter's calls. He said knowledge was the best defense in a world that didn't always welcome us. She pointed east, toward where the sun was trying to burn through the mist. That second horn was White Elk. He's telling Black Bear they've found signs of our night camp. Running Fox cursed softly. We cleaned it too slowly. The rain made us careless. No, Swift Arrow said, pulling his horse to a stop in a small clearing. We cleaned it well enough. They have someone else with them. He turned to Standing Fawn, his eyes grave. Someone who knows how to read more than just physical signs. Understanding dawned cold in Standing Fawn's chest. Night Singer, the spirit tracker. Running Fox's hand went to his medicine bundle. I've heard of him. They say he can read the dreams animals leave in their dens, that he can track the passage of ghosts through the spirit world. He was my mother's teacher before she became a medicine woman, Standing Fawn said softly. He can follow the trail of a person's spirit, especially if he knows them well, and he knows me better than most. The horn sounded again, closer now. Swift Arrow made a quick decision, reaching into his own medicine bundle and pulling out a small leather pouch. Then we'll have to cloud his vision. Standing Fawn recognized the sacred herbs he held, sweetgrass and sage, cedar and tobacco. The smoke ceremony here. Sacred smoke disrupts spirit tracking, Swift Arrow explained, already dismounting. Running Fox, Make a small fire. Standing fawn. If you know the prayers, we'll need them." They worked quickly, gathering dead branches, still dry under their bark despite the recent rain. Standing fawn began to sing softly as Swift Arrow prepared the herbs, her voice carrying ancient words into the mist. Running Fox stood guard, his bow ready, while the other two knelt by the tiny fire. As the sacred smoke rose, Standing fawn felt the familiar shift in the world that came with strong medicine. The fog seemed to thicken, taking on shapes that almost made sense before dissolving again. Swift Arrow's voice joined hers in the prayer, his deeper tones weaving through her melody like strong roots supporting new growth. The horn called once more, but this time its voice seemed confused, uncertain. Standing fawn smiled grimly. "Night. Singer will have trouble reading my trail through the sacred smoke. But he's clever. He'll try to work around it. Then we'll give him more puzzles to solve." Swift Arrow pulled out a small knife and cut a lock of his own hair, laying it in the fire. "Let him track two spirit trails now, mixed together. Running Fox?" Understanding, Running Fox added his own hair to the flames. The smoke took on a deeper complexity, carrying the essence of all three of them into the misty air. "We should separate," Running Fox suggested. "Give them 3 trails to follow, instead of 1. But Swift Arrow shook his head. "No, they'd expect that. Together we're stronger and more unpredictable." He turned to Standing Fawn. "Unless you think we should split up." She looked between these two warriors who had risked everything for her, feeling the bonds that had grown between them like vines strengthening a wall. "Together," she said firmly. "Some paths must be walked side by side." Swift Arrow nodded, a quick smile touching his lips before the hunter's horn brought them back to urgency. "Then we ride for the Thunder River. Let's see how Night Singer tracks. Spirits through running water." The Thunder River lived up to its name, its voice drowning all thought as they made camp in a shallow cave above its banks. They had crossed at dawn, using Swift Arrow's knowledge of the hidden ford to make their way over slick red stones, while the morning mist still clung to the water. Now, as evening painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, they allowed themselves the luxury of rest. Running Fox had gone to check their back trail, leaving Swift Arrow and Standing Fawn alone in the cave's shelter. The fire between them was small, carefully screened to prevent its light from reaching the cave's mouth, but it cast enough warmth to drive away the river's chill. Swift Arrow sat with his back against the cave wall, a piece of soft pine wood. In his hands, his knife moved with quiet purpose, carving away small curls of wood that caught the firelight like fallen stars. Standing Fawn watched his hands work, noticing how such large warriors' hands could move with such delicate precision. "In my tribe," he said without looking up, "we have a tradition. When words are too dangerous to speak aloud, we carve them instead. Let the wood carry the weight of what we dare not say." Standing Fawn drew her blanket closer, understanding in her bones what he meant. Words like the ones growing between them, tender, forbidden things that could never be spoken in the normal way of their peoples. "And what does the wood say now?" His knife paused, then continued its careful work. "It speaks of paths crossing in starlight, of medicines that heal more than just the body, of traditions that sometimes must bend so that new growth can find the sun." He worked in silence for a moment more, then held out his hand. In his palm lay a small carving, 2 feathers intertwined, their edges flowing together so perfectly. It was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The craftsmanship was exquisite, speaking of both skill and something deeper, more urgent than mere artistry. Standing Fawn took the carving, her fingers brushing his palm. The touch sent warmth through her that had nothing to do with the fire. "In my tradition, 2 feathers joined this way speak of souls finding each other across great distances, of destinies woven together by the spirits themselves. Perhaps that's why I carved it this way," Swift Arrow said softly. "Some knowledge lives in the heart before the mind understands it." She traced the carved feathers with one finger, feeling the story hidden in their wooden curves. When I was small, my grandmother told me that love was like water. It finds its own path, no matter what obstacles we put in its way. She looked up, meeting his eyes across the fire. I never truly understood what she meant until now. Swift Arrow's expression softened, the warrior's mask falling away to reveal something more vulnerable, more true. Among my people, a war chief must put duty before all else, must be as unmovable as the mountains, as constant as the North Star. He smiled slightly. No one ever warned me that mountains can be moved by persistent streams, or that stars can be outshone by earthly light. You risked everything, Standing Fawn said, the weight of that truth settling between them like an unspoken vow. Your position, your honor, your very life, all for a condemned woman you had never met. No. His voice was gentle but firm. I risked everything for a woman brave enough to choose compassion over fear, healing over hatred. How could I do less when faced with such courage? The river's song seemed to soften then, as if nature itself were listening to words that should never have been possible between a war chief and a condemned medicine woman. Standing Fawn held the carving against her heart, feeling its message, pulse with her own heartbeat. My people have a saying, she offered into the gentle silence. What the spirits have joined, no earthly law can separate. Swift Arrow reached across the space between them, his hand covering hers where it held the carving. Then perhaps we are not so much breaking our traditions as following older ones, more sacred ones. The moment stretched between them, fragile as spider silk but strong as sinew. Then Running Fox's warning whistle split the air, 3 short notes that meant danger approaching. Swift Arrow was on his feet in an instant, the warrior's mask sliding back into place, but his eyes, when they met hers, held promises no carving could capture. We must go, he said, already gathering their few supplies. But remember, what is carved in wood, like what is carved in hearts, cannot be undone. The arrow came without warning, a dark whisper through leaves that found Swift Arrow's shoulder. He grunted but kept his seat, wheeling his horse to face the attack, even as Running Fox's bow sang its reply into the shadows. Down! Standing Fawn pulled Swift Arrow from his saddle as a second arrow passed through where he had been. They rolled behind a fallen log, her healer's hands already seeking the wound while Running Fox provided covering fire. Black bears! Arrows, Swift Arrow said through gritted teeth. I recognize the fletching. Standing Fawn worked quickly, her fingers finding the arrow's shaft where it had pierced muscle but missed bone. Be still. This will hurt. Without waiting for his response, she snapped the shaft close to the wound, leaving only enough to grip for removal. A war cry split the air, warriors emerging from the trees like shadows taking form. Running Fox's bow sang again and again, keeping them at bay, but more shapes moved in the undergrowth. They were surrounded. Sister! The voice cut through the chaos, her father's voice heavy with authority and grief. Give yourself up. There is still a chance for mercy. Standing Fawn's hands stilled on Swift Arrow's wound. He caught her wrist, his eyes meeting hers with fierce certainty. Don't, he whispered. Whatever you're thinking, don't. She touched his face gently, leaving a smear of his own blood on his cheek. Trust me, she breathed, then rose to her feet, hands raised. I will speak with you, father, she called, but first let me tend to the wounded. You taught me that even in battle, a medicine woman's duty comes first. A tense silence followed. Running Fox kept his bow drawn, but no more arrows flew from either side. Finally, her father's voice came again. You may tend him, but know that any attempt to flee will bring swift death. Standing Fawn worked with focused intensity, her movements precise despite the watching eyes. She tore strips from her dress to make bandages, her fingers weaving prayer and purpose into each fold. Oh, the wound isn't deep, she murmured for Swift Arrow's ears alone as she cleaned around the arrow. But what I do next must look worse than it is. When I pull the arrow, cry out. Make them believe you're badly hurt." Understanding flickered in his eyes. She saw him gather breath, then nodded sharply and pulled. His cry of pain was convincing enough to make even Running Fox glance back in concern. Blood welled from the wound, but Standing Fawn's hands never hesitated. She pressed herbs into the cut, whispering prayers that were more than just show. The bandage she wrapped around his shoulder was medicine woman's work, each layer placed with careful intention. "The bleeding is worse than I feared," she announced loudly, pitching her voice to carry to the watching warriors. "He needs proper tending, Father, the kind that takes time and sacred space." She stood again, facing the shadows where she knew her father waited. "You taught me also that life is sacred, that every soul deserves the chance to walk its full path. Will you make me break that teaching?" A long moment passed. Then her father stepped into view, his face lined with conflict. "You speak of sacred teachings, yet you broke our most sacred law." "I broke one law to keep a higher one," she replied. "As Swift Arrow broke his duties to uphold a greater duty. As you once broke tradition to marry my mother, though she came from another tribe." More warriors emerged from the trees. She counted 8 in all, including Black Bear and White Elk. Their faces showed the strain of long pursuit, but also uncertainty. Her words had struck home. "The wounded man needs shelter," her father said finally. "There is a cave upstream. We will take him there under guard. Then you and I will speak of these higher laws you claim to serve." Swift Arrow started to protest, but Standing Fawn's hand on his good shoulder stopped him. "Agreed," she said, "but I will tend him first. A medicine woman's work cannot be rushed, even under guard." As Running Fox helped Swift Arrow to his feet, she felt the weight of the carved feathers where they hung hidden beneath her dress. Her father might see a prisoner tending a wounded man, but she knew the truth, that every wrap of the bandage was a promise, every herb a declaration, every prayer a defiance of the laws that would keep them apart. The bandage around Swift Arrow's shoulder was more than just medicine. It was a banner of rebellion, a flag of change planted in the soil of tradition. And as they moved toward the cave under her father's watching eyes, Standing Fawn silently added one more prayer to her medicine, a prayer for the wisdom to find a path between duty and heart, between old ways and new truths. The cave her father chose was not unknown to Standing Fawn. As they approached its mouth, she felt the familiar tingle of sacred power that marked places where the spirit world drew close to the physical one. Ancient handprints marked the entrance, painted in red, ochre that had outlasted generations of rain and wind. Inside, behind the guards' backs, her fingers found what she sought, petroglyphs carved deep into the living rock. Even in the dim light, she could trace their shapes, the spiral of life, the arrow of purpose, and between them, a symbol she had seen before, but never truly understood until now. 2 figures joined by a line of lightning, marked with the signs for forbidden and destiny intertwined. "These caves were used by the Old Ones," her father said, watching her fingers move across the ancient markings. "Before the great wars, before the divisions between tribes. They say medicine women and warriors from all peoples would meet here to share their wisdom." Swift Arrow sat with his back against the cave wall, his wounded shoulder carefully tended. His eyes met Standing Fawn's, sharing a moment of understanding about the significance of where they were. "Tell me the story, Father," Standing Fawn said, her voice carrying the formal tones of a medicine woman seeking knowledge. "Tell me of the Old Ones and their ways." The guards shifted uneasily, but her father's expression softened slightly. He had always been a keeper of stories, and even now, with duty hanging heavy between them, she saw the teacher in him respond to the student's request. "They say there was a time of great sickness," he began, settling onto his haunches near the cave's entrance. "Not unlike the spotted fever you fought. It moved between all peoples, red and white, friend and enemy, taking lives without regard for the boundaries we had drawn." Standing Fawn continued tracing the petroglyphs, letting their ancient power flow through her fingers. What did they do? They did what you tried to do, her father said quietly. They shared their medicine. Warriors who had fought each other met here in peace, bringing their tribe's healing wisdom. Medicine women who had been forbidden to speak to outsiders sat together, weaving their knowledge into something greater than any one tradition. And did the spirits strike them down? Swift Arrow asked from his place against the wall. Did their people suffer for this sharing? Her father was silent for a long moment, studying the wounded warrior. No, he finally admitted. The stories say it was a time of great healing, not just of bodies, but of the rifts between peoples. Then why? Standing Fawn's voice caught, slightly. Why did we stop? Why did we build walls between our medicines, our wisdom, our hearts? Fear, her father said, but there was a new note in his voice, something like questioning. Fear of loss, of change, of the unknown. Each generation added new laws, new boundaries, thinking they were protecting what was sacred. Standing, Fawn pressed her palm against the ancient handprint, marveling at how perfectly it fit, as if the old ones had left this message specifically for her to find. But what is more sacred than healing, than life itself? Swift Arrow stirred, drawing everyone's attention. Among my people we have a saying, the medicine bundle grows stronger with each herb added. Perhaps our traditions are like that, meant to grow, to change, to take in new wisdom while keeping the core sacred. One of the guards, White Elk, stepped forward, his face troubled. But where does it end? If we share our medicine with the whites, what else will they take from us? They took my grandmother's knowledge, Standing Fawn said, finally revealing what she had told Swift Arrow and Running Fox. And now her granddaughter returns it to us, preserved in her writings when we thought it lost forever. She reached for the journal hidden in her dress. The spirits work in circles, Father. What was taken can return, changed but undiminished. Her father's eyes fixed on the small book, recognition flickering across his features. Your grandmother's teachings, the ones lost in the Great Migration, and more. Standing Fawn opened the journal, letting him see the careful drawings, the precise instructions, the prayers written in their own language. The settler woman's grandmother learned from us, respected our ways, preserved our knowledge out of love for the healing arts. Is that not also a kind of sacred trust? The petroglyph beneath her other hand seemed to pulse with power, the two figures joined by lightning, forbidden yet destined, like her and Swift Arrow, like the two paths of medicine, separate but meant to join. The old ones knew, she said softly, but her voice carried to every corner of the cave. They left us this message, here in this sacred place, that some boundaries are meant to be crossed, some traditions meant to grow, some loves meant to bridge the unbridgeable. The storm broke over the sacred cave, like the spirits themselves were at war. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the ancient paintings in brief, brilliant flashes that made them seem to dance. Thunder followed, so deep it shook loose stones from the cave's ceiling. The spirits speak, White Elk said uneasily, looking between Standing Fawn and her father. Perhaps they pass judgment on what we discuss. Standing Fawn stood in the cave's entrance, watching the storm rage. Wind whipped her hair, carrying the scent of rain and possibility. Or perhaps they remind us of their power to change what seems unchangeable, she said. Look there. A massive pine tree stood sentinel on the ridge above the cave, its branches reaching toward the turbulent sky. As they watched, lightning struck it with explosive force. The tree split, its heart laid open to the storm, but it did not fall. Instead, the lightning left its mark in spiraling patterns down the trunk, like sacred symbols carved by nature itself. Among my people, Swift Arrow said, moving to stand beside her despite his guard's warning gesture. Such a tree becomes sacred. We call it the Spirit's Torch, because it proves that even the most devastating force can create beauty if we have eyes to see it. Her father stepped forward, his expression troubled. You speak our ways as if you were born to them, war chief. How is it you know so much of what should be hidden from outsiders? Because I listened, Swift Arrow replied simply. Because I watched and learned instead of turning away in fear. Because I believed that wisdom, like light, belongs to no one tribe alone. Standing Fawn felt the truth of his words resonate with the thunder. She turned to face her father, letting him see everything in her heart. As I listened to Sarah's mother, learned her grandmother's story, understood that love of healing knows no boundaries. Another lightning strike illuminated the scene, casting their shadows against the cave wall like figures in an ancient story. Standing Fawn saw how her shadow and swift arrows seemed to merge, just as they had in the petroglyph's prophecy. When I was a girl, she continued, her voice carrying over the storm's voice, you taught me that medicine women must be strong enough to break with tradition when the need is great. You told me the story of Rainmaker, who defied her tribe's laws to learn the enemy's healing songs and saved our people in time of plague. That was different, her father protested, but she heard the uncertainty in his voice. How? Because it happened long ago. Because we made it safe by turning it into legend. She gestured to the journal she had shown him. This is our chance to reclaim what was lost, to grow stronger by sharing rather than hiding, to heal not just bodies, but the rifts between peoples. Lightning struck again, closer this time, and in its flash she saw Swift Arrow's face turned toward her with such open love that her heart caught in her throat. The guards shifted uncomfortably, caught between duty and the power of the moment. Your grandmother, her father said slowly, would have understood what you did. She always said that medicine was like water. It could not be truly owned, only shared. Then help me share it, Standing Fawn pleaded. Help me build bridges instead of walls. Look at Swift Arrow, a war chief who risked everything to save a condemned woman, because he saw beyond the boundaries of tribe and tradition to what was right. The storm's intensity seemed to peak with her words. Rain drove into the cave in sheets, forcing them all deeper inside, but Standing Fawn held her ground at the entrance, letting the wild water soak her clothes, wash away the dust of pursuit and fear. Swift Arrow moved to join her, his good arm steady around her waist. Together they faced the storm, and in doing so, faced those watching from the cave's shadows. His voice was quiet, but carried clearly. Some loves are like that lightning. They strike where they will, change what they touch, reveal what was hidden in darkness. She turned in his embrace, no longer caring who saw. And some loves are like that tree, split open but still standing, marked by power, but made more beautiful for it. The kiss, when it came, was as natural as rainfall, as powerful as lightning, as inevitable as thunder following the flash. Behind them, she heard her father's sharp intake of breath, the guard's murmur of surprise. But in that moment, with the storm raging and ancient power humming through sacred stone, nothing existed but this truth, finally spoken without words or carvings or careful metaphor. When they parted, the storm seemed to ease, as if satisfied with what it had witnessed. The lightning-struck tree on the ridge glowed within a fire in the darkness, its new scars catching the light like rivers of gold running through shadow. Dawn painted the storm-washed world in shades of pearl and gold. When the war party arrived, they came silently, materializing from the mist like spirits made flesh. 20 warriors of Swift Arrow's tribe, led by his own brother, Stone River. Their arrival had been inevitable, Running Fox had warned, but the timing struck Standing Fawn as significant. A new day, a new challenge. Stone River carried a war chief's arrow, Swift Arrow's own arrow, snapped in half. The message was clear even before he spoke. A broken leader, a broken trust, a broken bond with his people. Brother, Stone River's voice was heavy with formal authority. The Council of 7 Tribes demands your return. Surrender now, and you may yet walk the path of redemption. Swift Arrow stood at the cave's entrance, his wounded shoulder straight despite the pain Standing Fawn knew he must feel. "And what of her?" he asked, though he surely knew the answer. "The medicine woman's fate is not our concern." Stone River's eyes flickered to Standing Fawn, then away, as if looking too long might contaminate him. "Her people will deal with her according to their laws." "Their laws?" Swift Arrow's laugh held no humor. "The same laws that would execute a healer for saving a child's life? That would rather see ancient wisdom lost than admit we might learn from those we call enemies?" Standing, Fawn watched the warriors' faces, reading the conflict there. These were men who had fought beside Swift Arrow, who had seen his wisdom and courage proven time and again. Yet they were also men bound by tradition, by the very laws and boundaries she and Swift Arrow had challenged. Her father stepped forward, surprising everyone. "Your brother speaks truth you should consider," he said to Stone River. "We have discovered things here in this sacred place that challenge what we thought we knew." Stone River's expression hardened. "You, too, have been swayed by their rebellion. Has everyone forgotten our ways?" "No," Standing Fawn said, moving to stand beside Swift Arrow. "We remember our ways too well to watch them become chains instead of guides." She held out her grandmother's journal. "Look at what fear of change has cost us. Look at what we might regain if we dare to grow." Running Fox, who had been silent until now, stepped forward to stand with them. "I have witnessed their love," he said quietly, "not just for each other, but for the truth they serve. Is that not what our oldest stories teach? That love and truth are the highest laws?" Stone River's hand tightened on the broken arrow. "Pretty words, but the council's judgment stands." Swift Arrow broke his oath as war chief. The medicine woman broke her tribe's most sacred law. There must be consequences. "There already are consequences," Swift Arrow replied. He reached down and picked up half of his broken arrow, holding it up to catch the morning light. "Look at what breaking brings us. Not just destruction, but the chance to make something new from the pieces." To everyone's surprise, he took out his knife and began to carve the broken shaft, his movements sure despite his injured shoulder. Under his hands, the splintered wood transformed. When he finished, he held up a small flute crafted from what had been a weapon. "Our ways teach us that music can bridge the spirit world and our own," he said, offering the flute to his brother. "That harmony comes from understanding how different notes can work together. Perhaps it's time we applied that wisdom to how we live." Stone River stared at the flute, conflict clear on his face. "The council can learn," Standing Fawn said gently, "as we all must learn. My father stands ready to speak for us before your council, to show them what we have discovered in this sacred place. Will you at least listen before passing final judgment?" A long moment passed, broken only by the soft sound of wind in the lightning-struck pine above them. Then Stone River slowly reached out and took the flute, turning it over in his hands as if reading a prophecy in its carved surface. "It is said," he spoke carefully, "that the old ones would meet in caves like this, sharing wisdom across the boundaries of tribe and tradition." He looked up at his brother. Perhaps the spirits have led us here for a purpose greater than punishment." Swift Arrow touched his wounded shoulder, where Standing Fawn's medicine had begun its healing work. "All wounds can heal, brother, if we let them. All breaks can be mended into something stronger, something new." Stone River lifted the flute to his lips and blew a single clear note that seemed to hang in the morning air like a question waiting to be answered. When he lowered it, his eyes held a new light. "The council must still meet," he said, "but I will speak for what I have seen here, for the wisdom that might be gained by learning to bend instead of break." The council of 7 tribes gathered at the sacred cave, drawn by the power of what had happened there. They came bearing the elder's staff, an ancient piece of lightning-struck wood, carved with the history of all their peoples. Each notch, each symbol told a story of change, of challenge, of choices that had shaped their nations. Standing Fawn stood before them with Swift Arrow at her side, their shoulders touching. in quiet defiance of the space traditionally kept between accused and accuser, between tribes, between medicine woman and warrior. Her father and Stone River stood nearby, no longer guards, but witnesses to what was about to unfold. Night Singer, the spirit tracker, was the first to speak. He ran his aged fingers over the elder's staff, reading its stories like a book. "I followed their trail here," he said, his voice carrying the weight of vision. "But what I found was not what I expected. Their spirits have merged like rivers joining, creating something new and powerful." Thunderbear, the youngest of the council, leaned forward. "They broke our most sacred laws. That is all we need to know." "Is it?" Night Singer's eyes were keen despite his years. "I have walked the spirit path for 7 decades. In all that time I have learned one truth. The spirits care nothing for our laws. They care only for what lives in our hearts." He held up the elder's staff, pointing to its oldest markings. "Here at the beginning is the story of how our peoples first learned medicine. Did you never wonder why this story is carved in 7 different ways, one for each tribe?" The council members stirred uneasily. Standing Fawn felt Swift Arrow's hand find hers, drawing strength from the contact. "Because each tribe learned differently," Night Singer continued. "Some from the plants themselves, some from animal spirits, some from other peoples who shared their knowledge freely. There was no one way, no single tradition, only the endless flow of wisdom, like water finding its path down a mountainside." Standing Fawn stepped forward, her grandmother's journal held out like an offering. "As this wisdom flowed back to us, preserved by those we thought lost to us, the spirits work in circles, bringing back what was taken, transformed but undiminished." Grey Wolf, who had maintained silence until now, spoke from where he sat with the other tribal elders. "You say transformed. Others would say corrupted." "Look at the staff," Swift Arrow said, his voice carrying the authority of his former position. "Every marking shows change. Every story tells of adaptation. Even our greatest victories came from learning new ways, not from standing still in the face of change." He touched his wounded shoulder, where Standing Fawn's medicine had worked its healing. "I was taught that a war chief must be unmovable as stone. But I have learned that even stones are shaped by water, by wind, by the patient work of life itself." Night Singer nodded slowly, his fingers still tracing the staff's carvings. "And you, medicine woman? What have you learned on this journey?" Standing Fawn felt the weight of every eye upon her, but her voice was steady. "I learned that healing knows no boundaries, that wisdom, like light, belongs to no one people, that love—" She squeezed Swift Arrow's hand. "That love is the greatest medicine of all, powerful enough to break down walls between tribes, between traditions, between hearts." A murmur ran through the council. Stone River stepped forward, holding out the flute his brother had carved from. "The broken arrow. They speak truth. I have seen it with my own eyes. Their love is not just for each other, but for something larger, for the future of all our peoples." Night Singer took the flute, examining it with both physical and spiritual eyes. A weapon transformed into an instrument of harmony. Perhaps this is what the spirits have been trying to tell us. He turned to the council. "Our laws exist to protect what is sacred. But what is more sacred than this? 2 souls brave enough to show us a new path, medicine strong enough to heal the rifts between peoples." Thunderbear frowned. "If we accept this, where does it end? What traditions do we keep? We keep what serves life," Standing Fawn's father said unexpectedly. "We change what holds us back from growth, like the lightning-struck tree above us, broken open, but made more beautiful, more sacred by its transformation." Night Singer lifted the elder's staff high, its carvings catching the light like living things. "The staff tells us that change is the only constant, that every generation must find its own way of walking the ancient paths." He looked at Standing Fawn and Swift Arrow with eyes that saw far beyond the physical world. Perhaps these two are showing us the next turn in our people's journey. From his medicine bundle, Nightsinger withdrew an object that made the assembled council members draw in sharp breaths. The challenge token, a disc of polished obsidian, ancient as the mountains themselves, used only when the fate of the tribes hung in balance. Its surface caught the cave's firelight, reflecting back images that seemed to move of their own accord. "There is an older law than the ones you have broken," Nightsinger said, his eyes moving between Standing Fawn and Swift Arrow. "A law that predates our divisions, our separate traditions. The law of sacred challenge." Thunderbear surged to his feet. "You cannot mean to invoke—" "I do." Nightsinger's voice carried the weight of generations. "When medicine and warfare join in sacred purpose, when love and duty clash, when old ways and new wisdom meet, the challenge offers a path forward." Standing Fawn felt Swift Arrow tense beside her. They both knew what this meant. The challenge was rarely invoked, but its terms were absolute. Victory would mean complete vindication. Defeat would mean accepting the council's harshest judgment. "Speak the terms, Spirit Tracker," Grey Wolf said formally, though his eyes held worry when they rested on his granddaughter. Nightsinger held the obsidian disc flat on his palm. 2 trials, 1 for each accused. The warrior must face a challenge of healing. The medicine woman must face a challenge of warfare. Each must prove they understand the other's path. He looked at Swift Arrow. "You, who were war chief, must heal a wound that medicine alone cannot touch. And you," his gaze turned to Standing Fawn, "who were meant to be the next great medicine woman of your people, must win a battle without spilling a drop of blood." Stone River stepped forward, the transformed flute still in his hands. "And if they succeed? If they succeed, their union is blessed by the oldest laws. No tribe may forbid it, no council may judge it, no tradition may deny it." Nightsinger's voice softened. "But if they fail, if we fail, we accept exile," Swift Arrow said quietly. "Separately, to opposite ends of the earth." Standing Fawn's hand found his, fingers intertwining. "Then we will not fail." Thunderbear scoffed. "A warrior who knows nothing of medicine, a healer who has never held a weapon. The challenge will prove what we already know, that some boundaries exist for a reason." But Nightsinger was smiling, a secret sort of smile that made his ancient eyes gleam. "Perhaps, or perhaps it will prove what these two have been trying, to tell us that the greatest wisdom comes from crossing those boundaries with an open heart." He placed the challenge token in Standing Fawn's hands first. The obsidian felt warm, alive with possibilities. "You have until tomorrow's moonrise to prepare. Choose your witnesses, gather your medicines, steel your hearts." Swift Arrow touched the token in her hands, his fingers brushing hers. The obsidian seemed to pulse at the contact, ancient power recognizing something in their joined touch. "I choose Running Fox as my witness," Swift Arrow declared, tradition demanding immediate response. "And I choose my father," Standing Fawn said, meeting Grey Wolf's startled eyes, "who taught me that some traditions must bend so that others may grow stronger." Nightsinger nodded approval. "It is well chosen. The witnesses will help prepare you through the night. At dawn, we begin." He turned to address the council. "Until the challenge is complete, all judgments are suspended, all pursuits ended, all wounds." He glanced meaningfully at Swift Arrow's shoulder. "Must be allowed to heal." As the council members moved to make camp for the night, Standing Fawn and Swift Arrow found a moment alone near the cave's entrance. The lightning-struck tree stood guardian above them, its transformed trunk glowing with inner fire in the gathering dusk. "A battle without blood," Standing Fawn mused softly. "A wound that medicine cannot touch." Swift Arrow's hands framed her face with infinite gentleness. "Perhaps we have already begun to solve these riddles, without knowing it. You fought a battle against fear with the weapon of compassion. I began healing the wounds between our peoples with the medicine of understanding. She leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his certainty. Tomorrow will test everything we believe about love, about tradition, about what is possible when hearts dare to cross boundaries. Then let it test us. His smile held the fierce joy of a warrior preparing for noble battle. We will show them that the greatest courage lies not in maintaining walls, but in building bridges, that the strongest medicine comes from hearts brave enough to love beyond all bounds. The challenge token hung between them, its obsidian surface reflecting their joined faces like a promise of futures yet to come. Dawn broke over the sacred grounds with solemn ceremony. Nightsinger stood between two circles drawn in the earth, one marked with healing symbols, one with warriors' signs. At his feet lay an ancient shield, its surface decorated not with scenes of battle, but with images of transformation, arrows becoming medicine plants, wounds blooming into flowers. The challenge begins with the warrior, Nightsinger announced, his voice carrying to all gathered. Swift Arrow, you must heal a wound that medicine cannot touch. Look upon your people and see what ails them. Swift Arrow stepped into the healing circle, his wounded shoulder straight despite its bandages. Standing Fawn watched from where tradition demanded she wait, her heart pounding with the knowledge that everything hinged on this moment. Thunderbear spoke from the council's place. How can a warrior heal anything? He knows only the way of the bow, the path of blood. Swift Arrow turned slowly, surveying the gathered tribes. His eyes lingered on the divisions between them, how they clustered in separate groups, how ancient mistrust kept them apart even here. Then he smiled, and Standing Fawn saw in that smile the same wisdom that had led him to rescue her. The greatest wound I see is not in flesh, he said, his voice clear and strong. It is the wound of fear. Fear that change will destroy us, fear that sharing our wisdom will weaken us, fear that love across boundaries will unravel all we have built. He lifted the warrior's shield, but instead of raising it as protection, he set it flat upon the ground. A shield can guard against arrows, but it can also serve as a bridge across troubled waters. It can become a table where enemies sit to share food and stories. It can transform, as all things must transform, to meet the needs of the present. From his medicine bundle, he drew out the flute he had carved from his broken arrow. Listen, he said, and began to play. The music that emerged was unlike anything the tribes had heard before. It wove together sacred healing songs with warriors' battle chants, finding harmony in their differences. As he played, Standing Fawn saw tears in the eyes of even the hardest warriors, saw hands reach across tribal divisions to clasp in recognition. When the last note faded, Swift Arrow spoke again. The wound I heal is the breach between us. The medicine I offer is the courage to change, to grow, to love beyond the boundaries of our fear. Nightsinger's eyes gleamed with approval. The warrior has healed with wisdom rather than herbs. Now the medicine woman must face her challenge. He turned to Standing Fawn. Enter the warrior's circle and show us how to win a battle without spilling blood. Standing Fawn stepped forward, feeling the weight of every gaze. Thunderbear rose again, his voice sharp with challenge. What does a healer know of battle? How can she possibly? I have fought battles you cannot see. Standing Fawn cut him off, her voice carrying the strength of her conviction. Every life saved is a battle won against death. Every tradition questioned is a war fought against ignorance. She moved to the shield Swift Arrow had laid down, placing her grandmother's journal beside it. You ask how to win without bloodshed. Let me show you a victory already won. Opening the journal, she began to read stories of her grandmother's wisdom, preserved by those they had called enemies, prayers and healing ways kept safe through generations of conflict, knowledge that had flowed like water around the dams. Of fear and prejudice to return home at last. The settlers you fear took this wisdom not to destroy it, but to protect it, she said, her voice rising with passion. They learned our ways not to steal them, but to preserve them. and now their grandchildren return these teachings to us, proving that love of healing transcends all boundaries. She lifted her eyes to the council. I win this battle not with weapons, but with truth, not with blood, but with understanding. The greatest victories are won in hearts and minds, when we help others see that what they fear most may be what they need most deeply. Thunderbear had gone silent, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. One by one, the council members leaned forward to examine the journal's pages, recognition and wonder dawning in their eyes as they saw their own lost traditions reflected back at them. Night Singer lifted the challenge token, its obsidian surface catching the light like a star brought to earth. They have done it, he declared. The warrior has healed our deepest wound. The medicine woman has won her battle without raising a hand in violence. The challenge is satisfied. He placed the token upon the shield between them. Let all bear witness. These two have proven that the greatest strength lies not in rigid tradition, but in the courage to forge new paths while honoring the wisdom of the old. The Union blanket had been woven in secret by the women of both tribes during the long night of preparation, its patterns telling the story of two paths becoming one. Now it draped across Standing Fawn and Swift Arrow's shoulders as they stood before their joined peoples, its weight both blessing and responsibility. Night Singer traced the blanket's intricate designs with gnarled fingers. See how the medicine symbols and warrior marks blend here, creating new patterns while keeping their own strength. This is the way forward, not the erasing of differences, but the celebration of how they complement each other. The morning sun streamed through the entrance of the sacred cave, illuminating the ancient petroglyphs that had foretold this moment. Standing Fawn felt its warmth on her face, matching the warmth of Swift Arrow's hand in hers. Around them, the boundaries between tribes had begun to blur as people mingled, sharing stories and hesitant smiles. There is more, Grey Wolf said, stepping forward. His face had softened since the challenge, years of rigid tradition giving way to something new. The council has reached a decision about the grandmother's journal and what it represents. Thunder Bear, who had been their strongest opponent, now stood with quiet dignity. We were wrong to fear the sharing of wisdom. What Standing Fawn and Swift Arrow have shown us is that knowledge, like love, only grows stronger when it is shared. Stone River joined them, carrying both the flute carved from the broken arrow and the warrior's shield that had become a bridge. The council proposes a new gathering to be held at each full moon in this sacred place. Medicine women and warriors from all tribes, and yes, even trusted settlers, will meet here to share their wisdom. A return to the old ways. Night Singer nodded approvingly, when healing knew no boundaries and strength meant more than the ability to wage war. Standing Fawn felt tears in her eyes as she watched her father approach Sarah's mother and her grandmother's journal. The settler woman's face shone with joy as she and Grey Wolf began to discuss the teachings preserved in its pages. Look, Swift Arrow whispered, directing her gaze to where young warriors from different tribes were examining the shield's transformation paintings with new interest. They begin to understand that change doesn't mean loss. It means growth. Running Fox, who had stood witness to their journey from the beginning, smiled at the sight. You have started something here that will outlive us all. Future generations will tell the story of how a condemned medicine woman and a war chief, brave enough to follow his heart, changed the course of our peoples. Under the Union blanket, Swift Arrow's arm tightened around Standing Fawn's waist. They will tell only part of the story, he said softly. They cannot know how my heart knew you before my eyes did, how your courage called to something in my soul that had been waiting to wake, or how the spirits themselves guided us. Standing, Fawn added, thinking of the lightning-struck tree that still stood guardian above them, speaking through storm and stone, through ancient paintings and borrowed wisdom, showing us that love is the greatest medicine of all. Night Singer lifted the challenge token one last time, its obsidian surface reflecting the light of a new day. By the oldest laws, by the wisdom of the spirits, by the proof of your heart's strength, you are now one. More than that, you are a bridge between peoples, a doorway to new understanding. He pressed the token into their joined hands. But remember, bridges must be maintained, doorways must be kept open. The path you have opened, others must be taught to walk. We will teach them, Standing Fawn promised, looking out at the faces of those gathered, faces that now showed hope where before there had been only judgment. Every life I heal will be a lesson in compassion. Every boundary crossed will be a step toward understanding, and I will show them that true strength lies not in standing apart, but in learning to stand together, Swift Arrow added. That the warrior's path and the healer's way are not so different when walked with an open heart. The union blanket seemed to warm around them, its woven patterns shifting in the cave's changing light. Standing Fawn recognized her own tribes, healing symbols merging with the warrior marks of Swift Arrow's people, creating something new yet anchored in tradition. Like their love, like their shared vision. It was both revolution and remembrance, a return to older truths long buried under fear and division. Above them, wind stirred the branches of the lightning-struck tree, its transformed trunk catching. The sun like a beacon. Standing Fawn smiled, understanding at last that some lightnings strike not to destroy, but to illuminate new paths through old darkness. The seasons turned like medicine wheel teachings, each moon bringing new growth to what Standing Fawn and Swift Arrow had planted. Their home, built where the lightning-struck tree could watch over it, became a place where boundaries dissolved and new traditions took root. Above their door hung strings of mixed tribal beadwork, crafted by women from both peoples, each bead a story, each pattern a promise of continuation. On this day, Standing Fawn sat teaching a circle of young healers, some from her tribe, some from Swift Arrow's, and 2 from the settler families who had proven their respect for the old ways. Her fingers worked a new string of beads as she spoke, weaving together symbols from all their traditions. "See how the settler's cross can nest within our medicine wheel?" she demonstrated, her clever fingers bringing harmony from apparent opposition. "And how their heart symbol embraces our spirit marks. The beads teach us that beauty comes from finding ways to help different truths support each other." Sarah, the settler child she had saved, now old enough to begin healer's training herself, leaned forward to study the pattern. "Like how my grandmother's journal helped bring back your grandmother's teachings." Standing Fawn smiled, remembering how far they had come from the day she had faced death for daring to help this child. Exactly so. The spirits work in circles, bringing back what was lost, transformed but undiminished. Outside, she could hear Swift Arrow's voice as he worked with his own students, young warriors learning that true strength meant knowing when to lower their shields, when to see beyond surface differences to deeper truths. He had not resumed the role of war chief, choosing instead to become something new, a teacher of bridge building, a warrior who specialized in making peace. "The beads tell us that change is not loss," Standing Fawn continued, touching the intricate patterns that married different traditions. "See how each keeps its own color, its own shape, while contributing to something larger." Her father, Grey, Wolf, appeared in the doorway. Age had softened him further, wisdom replacing rigidity as he watched his people grow stronger through opening rather than closing themselves. "The Council of 7 Tribes meets tonight," he announced. "They wish to hear how the experiment of shared healing has progressed." Standing Fawn nodded, her fingers still working the beads. "We will show them 60 new healers trained in combined wisdom. 3 epidemics stopped before they could take hold. 7 new medicines discovered by sharing knowledge." She smiled. "And not a single tradition lost, only enhanced, like a song gaining harmony." Swift Arrow joined them, his students dispersing for the day, and we will show them how the warrior societies have changed, how strength is now measured not just by skill with weapons, but by ability to build peace, how our young men learn to be both fierce and gentle as the situation demands. Their own child, a daughter they had named Harmony, played nearby with children from all the tribes. She was stringing her own beads, her small fingers already learning to blend patterns as naturally as she blended bloodlines and traditions. "They say," Grey Wolf mused, watching his granddaughter, "that other tribes have heard of what we do here, that they send observers, wondering if such changes could work among their own people." "Let them come," Swift Arrow said, his arms sliding around Standing Fawn's waist. "The cave paintings showed us that this way is older than our divisions. We are not creating something new, we are remembering something ancient." Standing Fawn held up her finished beadwork, letting sunset light catch its carefully planned pattern. At its center, two feathers intertwined, the same symbol Swift Arrow had once carved to speak what could not be said. Around it, healing symbols and warrior marks danced together, while settler crosses and native spirit signs formed a protective circle. "Each bead is a seed," she said softly. "Each pattern a map for those who will come after us. We plant these seeds knowing others will tend what grows from them." Their daughter came to show them her own beadwork, a child's awkward attempt that nonetheless showed an instinctive understanding of how different traditions could support each other. Standing Fawn felt tears in her eyes as she recognized the truth. Their love had not just changed their own lives, but had opened a door that future generations would walk through with ever-increasing confidence. "Tomorrow's trail," Swift Arrow said, touching the beadwork gently, "is marked not with footprints, but with hope." Dawn painted the hanging tree in shades of gold and promise, so different from the blood-tinged morning that had nearly claimed Standing Fawn's life. She stood beneath its branches now, her daughter Harmony at her side, watching the sun rise on the 5th anniversary of the day that had changed everything. The old rope was long gone, but memory remained, not as a wound, but as a testament to how far they had come. The tree itself had transformed, its branches now hung with strings of mixed tribal beadwork and medicine bundles from all the peoples who had learned to share their wisdom here. Swift Arrow emerged from the morning mist just as he had that fateful day, but this time he came not as a rebel warrior, but as a beloved teacher, followed by students from every tribe, including, Standing Fawn noted with quiet joy, the son of Thunderbear himself, who had become one of their most dedicated pupils. "Mother," Harmony said, pointing to where the dawn light struck the beadwork hanging from the branches, creating a dance of colors that seemed to bring the tree to life. "The light makes it look like the tree is wearing all our stories." "That's because it is, little one," Standing Fawn replied, drawing her daughter close. "This tree that was meant for ending became a beginning instead. Like the lightning-struck pine that guards our home, it stands transformed, not broken, but made, more beautiful by the changes it has witnessed." Swift Arrow joined them, his arms encircling them both. Above them, the morning chorus of birds filled the branches that had once held only silence and judgment. From the direction of their home, other families were approaching, healers and warriors, settlers and tribal members, all coming together for the dawn ceremony that had replaced the old divisions. "Look," Swift Arrow said softly, directing their gaze to the horizon where the sun rose between two peaks. "A new day dawns, but it carries the wisdom of all the days before it, just as our daughter carries the strength of all the traditions that made her." Standing Fawn touched the mixed beadwork that hung from the lowest branch, the first piece she had ever made, combining all their people's symbols. "We are like these beads," she said, as much to those gathering around them as to her daughter, each unique, each beautiful alone, but creating something even more beautiful when we dare to come together. The dawn light caught the hanging strands, sending ripples of color across the gathered faces. Where there had once been fear and division, Standing Fawn saw only unity and hope. The tree that had almost been her ending had become instead a gathering place, a teaching place, a place where wisdom flowed as freely as the dawn light between its transformed branches. The spirits, she whispered, feeling the truth of it in her bones, always lead us home, though sometimes by paths we could never have imagined.